Welcome to JB Live. Thank you so much for choosing to spend your Thursday night with us here in McEwen Hall at Elon University on 89.3 WSOE, the wonderful sounds of Elon, Burlington, the only alternative. We are here on Thursday, April 19th, 2018. I'm your host, Jack Haley, here with Blake Snetman. Blake,
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, Jack. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Got a lot of sports going on right now. We have the NHL and NBA playoffs. We have MLB kicking into high gear. And we're winding down the school year, Blake. We have, 3 weeks left after this week?
Yeah, it's flying by. You know,
That's crazy.
I remember our last two shows like it was yesterday. It's crazy.
It's wild. Well, we're going to get into that and some more when we come back. But first, we got some music to play for you. This is JB Live. Welcome back to JB Live. Blake, a lot of sports going on right now. What do you want to talk about first?
Well, it's playoff season right now in sports. It's either the beginning of the season or the end, like I said, playoff season. Let's talk a little hockey first.
Let's do it.
Something I really don't pay attention, but last night I paid attention, in particular to the Nashville Predators game. And also I watched the San Jose Sharks against the Anaheim Ducks.
Yeah, so the Preds took a 3-1 series lead with a 3-2 win over the Avs last night. Now, the Avalanche are kind of a great story this year. They went from being the worst team in the league last year to making the playoffs. I think that's obviously something they should be really proud of. Unfortunately, they are down 2 games in the series, which I've actually noticed there are not a ton of tight series thus far in the first round. You have the Pens and Flyers. There hasn't been a close game in the series, and it's a 3-1 series in that it is 3-1 for the Lightning over the Devils in that series, as the Lightning won 3-1 last night. Preds and Avalanche, we said. Preds are up 3-1 in the series. And the Sharks finished out the second sweep of the first round already after the Vegas Golden Knights did it the night before against the LA Kings. They took a 2-1 win last night over the Ducks, and they take the series. What do you make of that? I think hockey is usually known for being tighter series, more even matchups, but we're really not seeing that so far this year.
Yeah, I think I like that in sports, honestly. I like it hypes it up when you have the first round and it's a close round. And in hockey especially, we know the kind of people that attend those events, and the crowd is definitely ready to have a big uproar. But when your team is down 3-0 in the series, and you're on the line of losing, which is happening a lot. As you said, the closest series are 3-1 right now. There's not really any ground. Last night, Nashville, Colorado actually almost came back on Nashville last night. They scored 2 quick goals on their third string keeper, and I was impressed. I almost had a heart attack in the last minute when they took their goalkeeper out and they bring in the extra man. That always scares me, but Nashville pulled off the win. But like you said, it's a little surprising to see that.
Yeah, I think that's going to be good for the teams that advance, just because one of the huge things for hockey is you have to have the legs to go 82 games in the regular season and then get 16 more wins in the postseason. And a lot of teams, I believe the Ottawa Senators had to deal with it last year where they played a lot of long series, and they just kind of not fell apart at the end, but they didn't look like they had the legs to pull an OT win in Game 7 against the Pens. And I think that's why the Penguins are so good, is because they are so deep through 4 lines that they aren't affected as much by longer series. But that's always something that's very interesting to me in hockey. And then tonight we have the Bruins and Maple Leafs. The Bruins are up 2-1 in that series. That game just started. And we have the Capitals and the Blue Jackets. Capitals, surprising. I believe all 3 games have gone to OT in that series. Blue Jackets won the first 2 on the road, which is big. The old adage goes, the series doesn't start until the home team loses. But every away team has won the game in that series. So Capitals, if they really want it to be their year, they need a win tonight. Yeah. I don't want to call it must win,
I think it kind of is a must-win, honestly. No one wants to be down 3-1 in the series after beating your opponent twice in their house, coming back from if Columbus actually wins tonight and they go back. Don't they go back to Washington?
Yeah.
Is that how?
Yeah. They would go back to Washington for Game 5. Yeah, the more I think about it, the more I would call it a must-win, just because it's such a heartbreaker to lose in OT. So to lose those first 2 games the way they did in overtime, that already takes a lot out of you, and it's good to get a win they did. I think it was 2 days ago on Tuesday. On Tuesday, they won it in double OT on kind of a scrappy goal. But to get something under their belts, because if they lost 3 straight games in OT, that's a backbreaker.
Yeah, but I don't think Washington's not the youngest team, isn't that right?
They're not, but you look at their lineup. You have Oshie, you have Ovechkin, you have a great goaltender in Holtby, and the output they had this year, I think anything short of maybe a conference final berth would be a pretty big letdown for them. But, it's springtime, so short shorts, warm weather, and the Capitals losing in the first round. That's basically what you see every summer, or every spring,
Spring. Yeah, and I think tonight's honestly the night we possibly could have where 2 series go 2-2. Right now, the trend's not really going that way, with Boston just scoring their first goal of the game, up 1-0.
Less than a minute into the game, it was Torrey Krug getting on the board for Boston. So we'll see how that goes. I think if those series are evened up, that is a positive for whoever they would end up playing in the next round, just because, again, they would end up, that game would have to go, or that series, both of those series would have to go at least 6. So that gives just more and more time for the other teams to rest. And rest is the biggest thing in hockey, because you don't really see a lot of guys resting towards the end of the regular season like you do in the NBA, right?
Oh, yeah, you don't see that.
I mean, the last 15 games of the NBA season kind of feel pointless.
They do feel pointless.
I mean, even the entire regular season kind of feels pointless.
There are times where it does feel like that, but I think the NBA, especially Commissioner Adam Silver, has really looked at that and said, we don't want that, and made it known to teams like Greg Popovich and the Spurs. We'll talk about him a little later, but the Spurs in particular, they're known for resting because they have the older veteran players, especially when Tim Duncan was around.
But does it sit a little odd with you that a commissioner has to ask people to play? Like, these guys are getting paid a lot of money, and I get it. You want to gear up so you have a legitimate run at a championship. But begging guys to play seems like something you shouldn't have to do. If you're getting paid that much money to play a game you love in front of fans that adore you, I just feel like, I'm not saying, you need to play 48 minutes every night, but I'm saying begging a guy to play is a lot, I think.
And I think we had this talk when it was All-Star, when the All-Star break came, about Jimmy Butler and how he didn't play in that game.
Yeah, I think that's a comparable thing where, I think the All-Star game is one thing. The more I think about it, maybe not. I understand the fear of injury, the fear of really wanting to be at 100%. But again, I don't think it's asking a lot for them to play at least some in the game, Yeah,
I agree with you there. But a lot of this professional sports is also about strategy, and we're hearing a lot more often now that it's a business. And that's what players start to realize. They don't really realize that as well when they're younger, but when things start to go wrong or some issue happens, it's all about business. And I think that's kind of the strategy to prevent that from happening. Like, you don't want to risk a player. If they're older, they need a little more rest. Their body actually needs that day, and it actually will help them. And I think of the Spurs and their strategy there. But
yeah, I agree. I think it's also a little bit different where you're seeing NBA players play between 30 and 40 minutes. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's the intensity at which the hockey players play at. I think they are, a player can honestly take a break, a couple trips up the floor every now and then to kind of catch their breath. but they're out there. But
I feel like hockey is just so much more physical. I was watching the game
agree.
last night. I watched a documentary on like head hits to hockey players and like how CTE affects that on an episode of Real Sports with Bryant Gumbel. And the NFL used to not really admit that affiliation, and then they eventually did. And the NHL is still in that phase where they won't talk about how players can get CTE. When players are constantly taking hits every night, you see players go down about every game with blood coming out, and it's just...
Yeah, I think the NHL isn't talking about it because they don't have to yet. You know, you don't have Junior Seau taking his own life, and that I think that really spurred the conversation around CTE.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate, but I think until we see that in hockey specifically, not just in all sports, you're gonna have that conversation because that's not good for your brand.
Oh,
you know, we just said how sports are a business. You don't want a side effect of this sport could be, brain injury, permanent brain injury. That's not something you want to talk about. So until they have to, I don't think they will. But I also think the NHL has taken a lot more strides in player safety than the NFL has, personally.
Yeah. And I also think hockey in the United States is just going on the rise every year.
Yeah.
We've talked about like the expansion of it, having the Vegas Golden Knights, new team, swept their opponent the first round of the playoffs. Like, to bring in teams like that who don't really have hockey around in their area and to bring a city together like that, like, that's something special. And I see that a lot with the NHL right now.
Yeah, it is. And the NHL, I think, also has a lot more movement with teams than any other sport you'll see. Just looking back at the history, you have some really storied franchises that still have followings. You have the old Winnipeg Jets that moved to, I think they went to Dallas, and then, I don't know. But you had, the Minnesota North Stars moved down to Dallas, and then Minnesota got a new team, and Atlanta moved back to Winnipeg. You had the Quebec Nordiques, who still have a huge following. You have the Hartford Whalers, who still have a lot of fans. Teams like that. You have the Oakland Seals. You have all these different teams that it's been such movement that I think hockey is wanted in so many more places. And I think is what the MLS is trying to do, but I don't think they have quite the following yet because it's still a younger, not sport, but what am I saying here?
It's still developing in the United States.
League. It's a younger league than the other ones.
Yeah.
So it's still developing. I think they're doing a great job of expanding.
And they're going the same path that, the NHL had. We've seen like the big transition with them lately, adding Vegas and other teams moving around like that.
Yeah.
But like, I think for the MLS, since you brought it up, like bringing in a guy like Zlatan Ibrahimovic,
yes, absolutely,
that's huge. And to see what he's done, like his first few games with them, that just brings fans in, and a lot of soccer fans who like watch MLS soccer are really passionate about it. And I think that's cool. And they're trying to make it what like the Barclays Premier League is, but that's such a tough thing to do. But if they ever do get that transition to where they move soccer and to bring these clubs into the United States, I honestly don't know how the world will take that, because that's something that's special to the whole world. Soccer is not the United States like baseball is.
I agree. And I think the biggest challenge that the MLS faces that no other sport in America does is the fact that it is not the top level of that sport. The league in America is not the top level of that sport. So you mentioned the Premier League. It's so easy now, especially with TV, and it's not a super far trip if you really want it, if you were super passionate to go fly over to England and watch a game. Like, if someone's super passionate about that, they can make a trip out of it.
If they wanted to spend that money.
Yes, they would.
They would have to they'd have to have a lot of money. But meanwhile, someone who lives in a big city and could go to any other sporting event,
they're not gonna pay the money.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, like, U.S. soccer fans have to accept first that it will not be the best soccer they can watch.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's a lot harder with TV, where you can say, okay, I'm gonna buy the soccer package and I'm going to watch, to my heart's desire, the best soccer I can possibly watch, instead of spending, $200 to bring the entire family to an MLS game because it kind of feels minor league still.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, we have this great guy in Zlatan, but I think he's doing so well that it's really shedding a light on the skill difference between the MLS and everywhere else. You know what I mean?
He's looking like Ronaldo out there with all these fancy moves.
Yeah, well, he is, and it's kind of showing this is one guy. Soccer is not supposed to be dominated by one guy.
Oh, yeah. Well, you can have those players, but it's supposed to be more competitive.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think he's just showing more and more the skill gap in European soccer and European football and soccer in the US. I think that's just what it has come down to with bringing superstars. I think the goal is they want Zlatan to play here and then attract more and more stars.
Friends.
Yeah, so they had Thierry Henry, who was in his day a star for Arsenal.
Yeah.
He's a little bit older now, but he came over to play.
You got Beckham.
Yeah,
over here.
Beckham come over here. So you have had guys that, like, on the backside of their career will come and play in the MLS, but you're not getting a whole lot of premier guys. There aren't a lot of guys that are saying, "Oh, he's in his prime. We have to go see him."
Mm-hmm.
You're not getting those types of guys into the stadiums, and I think that's the biggest challenge that the MLS has.
I agree, and I think right now, not hockey. I think soccer is actually going to be on the up, like we've seen the MLS teams rise, and the reason why this new ESPN Plus, the online streaming service for ESPN, that they're basically bringing all these sporting events online, like even more than ESPN3. I think having the option to watch these games is something too, because you rarely see this MLS soccer on TV until you get to the playoff stage or however the postseason works for them.
Yeah, it's a lot of localized markets, and you'll get maybe, a slow Saturday afternoon, and it always feels like it's the Portland Timbers and the Seattle Sounders. It feels like no matter what, it's always the same two teams playing.
And it used to be the LA Galaxy with Landon Donovan. I remember watching him and being like, wow, this is our guy on the U.S. soccer team. Like, it's basically U.S. soccer just dragged out on every team, and we just pick the best players from every team, and here's our U.S. soccer.
Yeah, I think that it needs to be more disparity to draw people in, but also, again, like you said, they are trying to carve out their niche in already dominant markets. Like New York, you have the Yankees, the Mets, the Jets, the Giants, the Rangers, the Islanders, the Devils, a WNBA team, and the Liberty. So many options.
And we have lacrosse.
Yeah, and you have, who is it? Oh,
I don't know the teams for lacrosse.
I don't know.
You know? Yeah.
The Long Island Lizards, I think they are out there. Whatever. In any case, you have so many options. And then you add in the New York Red Bulls, who play out in Harrison, New Jersey.
Minor league teams for baseball? Sure they're around.
Yes, not as much.
Okay. Yeah.
But I'm saying the major sports that they're trying to compete with.
Oh, yeah.
So you're trying to attract people to Harrison, New Jersey. There's nothing to do in Harrison. I've been there quite a bit. Lovely right around it, but you're not saying let's go out of our way to go to Harrison, New Jersey. And then you have NYCFC, who's playing in Yankee Stadium, and they're like, it looks out of place.
Mm-hmm.
So trying to attract people away from saying, on top of all the other things that people want to do with their Saturday, you want to go fishing, you want to go play golf, you want to spend time with the family, you have errands to run, like to entice someone to get into soccer and say, hey, this isn't the best soccer, but it's the closest soccer, I think is a tough thing to do.
Yeah, I agree. And I think some of it also, like a contributing factor, is how foreign teams have, or every team does, but people want to go to the best of the best. So we have a guy like Christian Pulisic, USA's best player, who plays in Germany, who went to, he was on the youth team for one of the teams over there.
Yeah.
And those are the best youth academies. Why would you go to the United States if you're one of the best, if you're not going to get the best program like you would in Europe?
Yeah, I have a friend that I went to high school with. His name is Mason Toy. He graduated with me, went to Indiana University for a year. Not even a year. He went for one season for their soccer team. I think led the team in scoring as a freshman.
Wow.
Big Ten all-freshman team, I believe a freshman All-American, like a real stud. And he was training over in Germany, I believe with the same youth program that Christian Pulisic was.
Wow.
But now he plays in the MLS. He got drafted 6th overall, and he plays for Minnesota United. So it's definitely something that they are going to struggle with, I think. But people are getting excited. I think the biggest thing is Atlanta. Atlanta United is drawing like 70,000 people a game. Really cool to see.
More than the Falcons, of course.
Yeah. So when we come back, we're going to talk some NBA playoffs, and then we're gonna touch on some current events. This is JB Live.
Welcome back to JB Live. Jack, let's talk a little bit quickly, briefly about the NBA playoffs. We've had some good series, a little more interesting than the NHL. Last night, the Cavs beat the Pacers by 3 points, tied the series 1-1. Utah beat Oklahoma City in Oklahoma City to tie that 1-1. And for some reason, Minnesota is still not showing up against Houston. The Rockets winning in dramatic fashion by 20 points, leading the series 2-0 as the series heads to Minneapolis. Jack, what's going on tonight?
Tonight, we have the Heat and 76ers. They've already tipped off. They're tied at 17, about halfway through the first. The Sixers lead that series. I'm sorry, is that series tied?
The series is tied 1-1, and this is Joel Embiid's first game playing in the series.
The man in the mask is back for the 76ers. I like the 76ers in this series. I think they're going to be good. We also have the Trailblazers and Pelicans. New Orleans is up 2-0. And we have Game 3 of Warriors-Spurs. That series is 2-0 in favor of the Warriors. Mm-hmm. Bit of an odd situation going on in San Antonio.
Let's talk about that last.
Sure.
As our transition piece.
Sure.
Let's talk a little bit about the Cavs. Cavs-Pacers. Yesterday, tied it up. Cavs did. Going back to Indianapolis. What do you think about that?
The fact that they need to tie it up was quite shocking to me. I remember seeing ESPN made sure, and just the best timing possible, they made sure to post the records all time in the first round, and LeBron's only lost like 4 times.
Yeah,
and then they got blown out. Mm-hmm. Which I love. But then he responded in Game 2. He scored the first 16 points of the game before finishing the first quarter with 20. So he was fired up. He was ready to play. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think it's the LeBron's Cavaliers because that's the only player you hear about. You said he scored the first 16 points of the game for his team. He had more points after the first quarter than the Pacers scored in that entire quarter. I don't know. The Cleveland is so much worse than they were last year. They lost a key puzzle piece in Kyrie Irving. They have all these players that are brand new. They have Kevin Love, LeBron James, and basically role players. And I do not know how, if they get past this round, they probably will, how they're going to be able to get to the NBA Finals. And if they get there, that's a lousy series right there.
Yeah, LeBron finished with 46 points, 12 rebounds, and 5 assists in Game 2. Quite the performance, but I agree. I'm intrigued for the first time, I think, ever that I've ever been, kind of following the NBA by the race in the Eastern Conference. It's always kind of just been assumed whatever team LeBron was on. I still think they make it to the NBA Finals. Mm-hmm. I just don't see it shaking out any other way. I think Boston's good.
I don't think they have it, though. They don't even have a Kyrie or Gordon. They just have Al Horford, and then they have young players like Tatum and Brown. But that's about it.
Yeah.
I do like them, though. They're doing a lot better than I thought they do, and I think they kind of do that every year. We've seen, history's kind of shown us that their players might not be as good as we think, but they show up and they perform, and that's what they've been doing.
Yeah. And also, going back to, I'm clicking through the the schedule here,
Mm-hmm.
these guys are getting like 2 and 3 days off in between single games.
Oh, yeah.
Hockey, it's irregular if they get 2 days off. It's a lot of one game or 1 day off and you're back to playing. So I think, again, a little bit biased. I'm much more of a hockey fan than I am a basketball fan, but I just think those guys are so much tougher. And especially the way the NBA guys complain about we need time off, we need a rest, we need to do this, we need to do that. Look at other athletes in sports,
I have a question about hockey.
Go for it.
Do they have series in hockey where, like, let's say the Predators play the Bruins 3 games in a row? They don't have that because I know they have that in baseball.
That's only in baseball.
Only in baseball. Okay, so yeah,
they may have some games. So I know if teams are close geographically. So I know the Rangers and Devils, they will play a home and home sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll alternate. They'll play a Tuesday night at Madison Square Garden, and then they'll play a Thursday night at the Prudential Center. But it's nothing like baseball, where the Yankees and Red Sox will play 4 times in a row.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I see exactly what you mean. When you talked about Philly, I like Philly, and I like Philly in these playoffs as well. I thought they were already putting up great work against the Heat without Joel Embiid, their big cover face for their team. And I think having him I think Dwayne Wade had an incredible game, kind of living back to his prime a little bit, where they took game 2 of the series. But I like Philly. I think Philly, I don't know their path to get to the Eastern Conference Finals, but I like them. I really do.
Yeah.
And they're exciting. They're fun. They're young. People want to jump on that bandwagon. I don't see Toronto's never been a great playoff team. They've kind of struggled in the past. I don't know. I think we always see how the West is so much stronger, but I think especially this year, you can really see right through it.
Yeah, I agree. I'm intrigued by the 76ers because you talked about how young and fun they are to watch. I completely agree, but I don't know if that translates in the playoffs.
Yeah,
I don't know if the hype is going to get to them because everyone is riding them so hard. This is the first time they're back in the playoffs in 8 years, 9 years?
Yeah, the last time they played, LeBron was in Miami.
Right. So I think I'm interested to see how they handle the hype. So far, I think they've done okay with it. But I'm intrigued to see that. I'm interested to see the Raptors just because, they're the number 1 seed, I believe.
Yeah, they're the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference.
Right, they're the number 1 seed. Kind of a different position for them. LeBron is usually the number 1 seed. So, interested to see how that goes. I'm not quite certain. Again, it's hard to bet against LeBron. As much as I may dislike him, it's hard to bet against LeBron, and it's hard to bet against experience. And I think the Cavaliers have both. And I think the Celtics have both. I think they don't have LeBron, but they have guys that have been there before, guys that can get it done, and they have the prestige, I guess, as a club, if you want to call it that.
And they have the fan base.
They do. So it's high expectations, but I don't think it's any higher than it is with Cleveland. Mm-hmm. With Cleveland, they're now expected to win.
Yeah, Cleveland's definitely, the pressure's on with them. Boston's more like, they lost Hayward, they lost Kyrie, they lost Marcus Smart, they're losing these puzzle pieces. They're expected to lose. But when they don't have that pressure on, they've been working hard the whole year, and these guys want to show the league that, hey, I'm better than you think I am. Although I'm young, I'm good. Like Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum and Terry Rozier in particular, which we've seen some great performances out of them. Like you said, they could do something, but I don't see them getting to the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah. So how do you think the playoff performance of LeBron will play into the free agency?
So we know the kind of player LeBron is. He's obviously going to be putting up extreme numbers every single game from now on out because the first game he scored 25, and that was not enough. This game he put up 40 or something like that. And that was just enough to beat the Pacers.
Yeah.
But we know what kind of player LeBron is, regardless of his playoff performance. I think this kind of decides what happens to him in the future. I think Cleveland is gone.
You think he'll leave Cleveland a second time?
I think he'll leave Cleveland a second time. I don't see what's left there. I completely agree.